Welcome to episode number 12 of the NewsNail. We've got a quick one for you. Breaking news today. I thought I had to jump right on it. It's about Elon and his thoughts on remote work as revealed in some emails he sent to some Tesla and SpaceX employees, and then a Pharma Industry NewsRivit. So let's get right to it. Try to get right to it. So again, Elon sent an email out to Tesla and SpaceX. By the way, SpaceX also the company that brings us Starlink. And again, how awesome is Starlink? It is enabling special forces in the Ukraine to communicate to each other by providing wireless internet service through their satellites. Really awesome. But anyway, so Elon sent a couple of emails, I think today or yesterday, to those employees talking about his views on remote work, which he thinks is kind of pretend work. And I quote, he wrote, "Anyone who wishes to do remote work must be in the office for a minimum, parens, and I mean, quote, minimum of 40 hours per week or depart Tesla. This is less than we ask our factory workers." He went on to say, the more senior you are, the more visible must be your presence. If you don't show up, we will assume you have resigned. So if you don't show up, you're done. Bye-bye. We'll see you later. And why is that? He has a firm belief that being present creates a culture that is fair and one that people want to be a part of it. He wrote in the email, "It is why I spent so much time in the factory so that those on the line could see me working alongside them. If I had not done that, Tesla would long ago have gone bankrupt." He went on to say, there are, of course, companies that don't require this, referring to the folks probably at Google or Apple, but when was the last time they shipped a great new product? It's been a while. Did you hear that, Steve Cook? It has been a while. I think your biggest intro was it another lens, camera lens on the iPhone, or was it bigger, or was that the last one? It was smaller, something with size, but whatever. So he's comparing himself to the other companies because he knows that question is going to come up. But you know, that's the way he calls it. That's the way he sees it. He wants his people there. He said Tesla has and will create and actually manufacture the most exciting and meaningful products of any company on earth. And he believes this. And he ends it with, and this will not happen by phoning it in. Now, of course, someone asked him on Twitter, "Hey, Elon, you know, any additional comment to the people who think coming to work is an antiquated concept?" And his reply was, they should pretend to work somewhere else. And this is where I think Elon kind of has it. I know I sound like the old dinosaur worker, like, you gotta come to work. I used to get in battles with this with my old business partner when I said, we really should have a time when people should be here. I don't think 9 o'clock is excessive. We really should have people in the office. But Elon's not an old guy. He is, you know, he's calling it like he sees it, and I think he's absolutely right here, because what we're seeing is people are kind of phoning it in. A survey done by Resume Builder back in last fall found that 2/3 of workers are actually working 2 full-time jobs, and almost half of them are working less than 40 hours a week. That means they're doing less than 20 hours on each one of these works. So you know. And one of the people in the survey was quoted as saying, am I trying to be like, of course it's, you know, that generation, am I trying to be like a 5-star employee? Not really. I'm just trying to do the job and not get fired. I'm just trying to have a pulse and stay here. So, you know, Elon is probably right. You know, it's a good way to weed out the workers. You know, also, you know, I think what we've done here is created a mercenary worker. You know, when you're not tethered and tightly tied to something, it's easy to leave it. So you have these mercenary workers who work from home who would easily or gladly leave for another company for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 a year because there's no culture, there's no unity. You know, at the core, a business, including the place of work, is personal. I mean, it kind of has to be. It's where you spend the majority of your time awake, your awake time and your hopefully sober time is at work. And doing good work and being engaged in your work or engaged with your company is ultimately built on trust. And how can trust be earned, developed, or even demonstrated without a relationship? And relationships are primarily and most quickly and easily fostered by in-person communications. Maybe someday we'll have online tools like maybe Meta, but I was at a conference today and the Meta folks were there and people had the Oculus on. I tell you, it looks so silly, but whatever. Maybe in the future, there will be ways to duplicate that bonding, that way to foster that relationship, that personal one-on-one bond, but we don't have those tools yet. And until we do, this remote work thing, it is difficult to create a culture that's sticky, that'll keep people there and dedicated to your job and make it worthwhile for you to invest in those people. So Elon, probably calling it like he sees it. And then the study coming out, kind of confirming that. And, he probably is going to have to do layoffs like everybody else. He probably sees it down the road. He's got air cover with this bad economy and that everyone else is doing layoffs. But I think what he's doing, he might lose these folks, lay off these folks anyway. They may leave anyway, based on this mercenary type work kind of concept. So he's just accelerating the process, and it makes it both easier and more effective. He's going to lose the ones who didn't want to be there in the first place, and he doesn't have to be doing the laying off. People can self-select themselves out of Tesla. So that's it on that. Now, my NewsRivit is about healthcare and pharma, because again, I was at this conference and there's some pharma folks there talking about the vaccine, and I was reminded what an incredible accomplishment the COVID vaccine was. It was the Hail Mary of Hail Marys, in the rain, against the wind, 110 yards, caught, touchdown winner. What they said on the stages was it was as impactful to the worldwide health as it was as clean water. And that was done in such record time. It compressed pretty much 15 years into less than 12 months. Unbelievable. And I don't think the pharma industry really got the pat on the back they deserved, because it is one of the finest industries in this country, equal to or better than tech. We research and develop drugs that solves health problems for the world. And it is quite incredible. But anyway, onward. Pharma gets hit for a couple things: high drug prices, right? Ooh, these drugs are so expensive. But really it's today's miracles are brought about, today's new drugs are brought about by yesterday's miracles, which means it's the research that gets us there, but I will talk about that in a minute. The other one that they get beat up for, of course, is the opioid crisis. $35 billion in fines have been paid out by distributors, pharma companies who make the drugs, distributors who distribute them, even Walmart and CVS, the drugstores paid them. And let's look into this a little bit, shall we? We got the opioid crisis. Back in 1970, the government gave the DEA and the FDA the authority to regulate drugs. They had to create this list of scheduled drugs. Schedule 1 with things like heroin, LSD, MDMA, that had no, quote, acceptable medical use. MDMA, you might argue, it's also called ecstasy. I think people that go to concerts might think there's some medical use there. But anyway, moving on, I wouldn't know. The Schedule 2 drugs there is medical use, but they're highly susceptible to abuse, and that's where opioids fell in. So what they said with the Schedule 2, that you had to develop any firm that had anything to do with these opioids, these Schedule 2 drugs, had to register with the government. All individuals, that would include doctors, all the firms, the distributors, the drugstores, the pharma guys that developed it and manufactured it, they all had to register with the government. They also had to maintain and report to the DEA how much inventory they had, how much sales they had, and how many scripts that were written. Everything was reported. The DEA knew them all. And here's the kicker. The DEA establishes every single year a production quota that cannot be exceeded for how many opioids can be made. They're the ones that know how much is made. So they're the ones that probably knew that it was growing, because in 2002, there were about 40,000 kilograms was the production quota for opioids. And in 2013, it was over 160,000 kilograms. So if anybody could see the growth, it had to be the DEA and the FDA. So this is where my NewsRivit comes in. The commonality between these issues is the government. Now, I'm not a total libertarian, no government conspiracy theory kind of guy. The government has a role in certain places, but in this role, they take no responsibility, and they should. And they should in a couple of areas here. The reason the vaccine got out is because they got out of the way and let the pharma companies do what they do best. The reason why drug prices are high is the FDA and the drug trial process is expensive and not realistic. It costs anywhere between $500 million to $1 billion to bring a drug to market. You have to get it approved through a very staged clinical trial process, and it is not a realistic one set by the FDA. You have to give your endpoints to your final drug trial, the exact endpoints, to the FDA before the trial starts. If you don't hit it exactly, then you don't get approved. Even if you prove in that trial some other successful, beneficial use for that drug, you can't use it because that was not the original endpoint that you gave the FDA. Because, you know, tomorrow's miracles are funded by today's successes. The R&D in the pharmaceutical industry is expensive. That R&D and then what they charge for what they develop enables them to have the profits to invest that billion-dollar crapshoot that they lose more than they win with a process that is just not very good. And when it comes to opioids, let's talk even further. I've worked with several companies in my old business that had pharma companies that had anti-abuse technology, but they couldn't prove it because the FDA said that's not a clinical endpoint for a trial. Anti-abuse can't be proven, so you can't say it, so you can't use it. So they said, why are we bothering? And they had two types of anti-abuse technology. One was chemical, that if you broke the pill apart, it neutralized the effects of the opioid. The other one was physical, you couldn't crush it. And that was not a clinical endpoint. And that's why we never had, and we do not have today, opioids that can't be abused. Thanks, FDA. And then finally, this is the big one. They could, they should, they did have seen the opioid crisis before anyone else. They set the quotas every year. They set the quotas on how much could be made, right? And they had the authority and the power to stop it at any time, and they never did. They never took any responsibility for any of this. They didn't pay any fines. They were never called on the carpet for any of this. Everybody else did. And that's my rant for today. So thanks for watching the NewsNail. The NewsNail is a Nails Ed education media production. Please follow, download, and subscribe on either Apple or Spotify podcasts, where you can watch the NewsNail on the NewsNail YouTube channel. It is produced by Sky Montana and Abby Soroka. Music by Slate Hudson, which someday you'll hear when I can produce a little bit better. And fact checking and story sourcing again is by Rancher Pete, where you can follow on Instagram at Rancher Pete MT. Thanks a bunch. We will see you later, and have a great rest of your day.